What's up, everyone? This is Vintage Pokémon TCG, and today I wanted to share with you guys my Reshiphlosion deck. And so to understand this deck, you first have to understand why the format was Heart Gold, Soul Silver on this year, and what had happened. And so at the beginning of the 2011 season, it wasn't Heart Gold, Soul Silver on. It was Majestic Dawn on, and that was a lot of fun for a while. And then Black and White came out, and Black and White just changed everything. And that wasn't because there was a game-breaking card in Black and White. It wasn't because Black and White had all these new decks that came out with it. It was just because of the first turn rules. It was because before you could play, if you were going first, you couldn't do pretty much anything. You weren't going to be able to play any trainer cards, any supporter cards, any stadium cards. You were pretty much just sitting there, and if you were lucky, you were going to attach an energy to something, and then you were going to pass. And then Black and White came out, and they said, hey, now you can do whatever you want on the first turn. You can play trainer cards, you can attack, you can, it's just the purge. Go nuts, go crazy. And so the big thing that changed was there was a card called Sableye from Stormfront, and it had a Pokebody where if you started with it, if it was your active Pokemon to start the game, you just went first. So people would play 4 Sableye, and then they would have some strategy where they would win the game before their opponent even got a turn, through either Crobat G and Seeker and just knocking out all your opponent's Pokemon that way, or there was one deck that used Emboar to attach a bunch of fire energy to Fortress from Legends Awakened, which every time you attached an energy to it, you would flip a coin, and then if it was Tails, you did 20 damage to every Pokemon in play. And so Pokemon just said, we're not having any of this. You can't get away with that anymore. And so there were 13 sets in the Majestic Dawn through Black and White format, and they just got rid of 7 of them. They said, no Majestic Dawn, nothing up through, it's going to be Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and it's going to be Heart Gold, Soul Silver on. Right, and that just changed everything because, the popular decks, the set before, they weren't using cards from Black, or they weren't using cards from the Heart Gold, Soul Silver block. They were using, Gengar from Stormfront. They were using SP Pokemon. They were using Gyarados. Nobody was playing with Heart Gold, Soul Silver Pokemon. And so all of a sudden, in the middle of the season, right before U.S. Nationals, everybody just had to figure out, okay, all these decks that we were playing just, 3 months ago, they're gone. So what are we going to do now? And this deck was the big winner of that because, it was really fast. Or not really fast, but reasonably fast. It was very easy to play, and it was cheap, and it was consistent, and it did a lot of damage. Right, and the basic strategy was you had Reshiram. So Reshiram, this card came out, it got printed 10 different times. I think it was a tin promo, it was a box promo, it got printed as a regular rare in Black and White, it was a full art in Black and White, it was in Next Destinies, it was in Legendary Treasures twice, once as a secret rare. And what it did, it and Zekrom were basic Pokemon with 130 HP. And before that, you had Chansey from base set that had 120 HP, and every other Pokemon that had ever been printed as a basic Pokemon had no more than 110, and most of them were, 100 or less, right? And so all of a sudden there's this basic Pokemon with 130 HP. You can do 120 damage with it. The only thing is, you got to discard 2 fire energy. And so there were 2 strategies for using Blue Flare turn in, turn out. The first one, you used Emboar. You attached a bunch of fire energies from your hand, but turns out that's inconsistent. And so what ended up being the dominant strategy is to use Typhlosion Prime. And Typhlosion Prime had this Pokepower called Afterburner where you could just attach fire energy cards from your discard pile to your Pokemon. And so what Reshiphlosion was really trying to do is just get 2 or 3 Typhlosion into play, and then just use Blue Flare, and then you just keep using Blue Flare, turn in, turn out. There wasn't any complicated strategy. You weren't trying to build any sort of lock or jockey for board position. You were just going to use Blue Flare, and you were going to kick the shit out of your opponent that way. Right? And so this deck is really just focused on, how quickly can I get Typhlosion into play? How quickly can I use Blue Flare? And so I made a couple of interesting choices that were a little atypical at the time. I'm not playing Pokemon Collector, which, you know, if I had not been playing Pokemon Collector, people would have looked at me like I was crazy. But I've opted to play Dual Ball instead. And this is something that we saw, you know, when Pokemon EX started coming out, when people were playing Mewtwo, when people were playing Darkrai, people were like, hey, Pokemon Collector is really slow, and I don't want to take an entire turn supporter card just to get basic Pokemon into play. So I'm just going to play Dual Ball. And so that's what this deck is doing. It's trying to do is you're not trying to get, you know, a turn where you Collector for 2 Cyndaquil and a Reshiram or whatever. You're just going to use Dual Ball, and then you're going to play draw supporters. And then, yeah, I mean, besides that, you play 3 Quilava, which, I mean, I think the Worlds deck that got printed played 1 Quilava, and I'm mainly playing 3 Quilava so that I have more things to Pokemon communicate, so that I can more likely get a turn 2 or turn 3 Typhlosion. You know, Quilava helps with getting a second Typhlosion out. Quilava can help get a first Typhlosion out if your hand isn't very good. And yeah, besides that, it's mainly just, you know, you got the 4 Reshiram so that you have 4 over the course of the game, so that you have the highest probability of starting with it. You play 2 Revive so that you can bring it back from the discard pile. You play 2 Rescue Energy so that you can bring it back from the discard pile. You know, your supporter lineup, you've got these 4 Professor Juniper, which is a little bit atypical because, you know, it discards your hand. People didn't really want to do that, but, you know, in this deck, there's not really anything that I'm going to want late game. You know, as long as I have Reshirams, and I have Typhlosions in play, I can attack, and so I'm not really worried about discarding anything. And then you have your 3 Professor Oak's New Theory, you have 3 Sage's Training, which is pretty good if you already have one of the pieces of Rare Candidate Typhlosion in your hand, and you want to try and dig for the other. You got to look at 5 cards, and if any of them is the other piece, then you've got a Typhlosion in play. And yeah, the only like really complicated things besides that aren't just trying to focus on using Blue Flare would be these 2 cards, the Pokemon Reversals, which were, you flip a coin, if it's heads, you get to have a Gust effect, you have a Lysander effect, you can bring up one of your opponent's Pokemon. And the Worlds deck that got printed this year for Reshiphlosion did not play Pokemon Reversal, it was just Consistency. But I thought that this was just too good a card not to play. You know, if your opponent was setting something up on their bench that you wanted to take out, you would have that option. And then the other was a very important card, which was Plus Power. And Plus Power was important because Reshiram is capped at 120 damage. It's not like Magnezone Prime, where you can just discard more energy to do more damage. If you want to do more damage with Reshiram, you need Plus Power. And you do need to do more damage with Reshiram because, you know, Magnezone Prime has 140 HP. You can't knock it out with 1 Blue Flare. Donphan Prime has 120 HP plus Exoskeleton Pokebody, so you need a couple Plus Power to knock it out in 1 hit. And so there were going to be turns playing this deck where the Pokemon you were going up against just had too much HP, and you couldn't knock it out with 1 Blue Flare, and so you needed some Plus Power. And that's pretty much the deck. You know, I'm starting to make some videos about old decks, and, you know, if you guys are into this stuff, let me know. You know, if you played during this format, if you played, you know, Reshiphlosion at U.S. Nationals or at Worlds, or if you played against Reshiphlosion at U.S. Nationals or at Worlds, you can tell me a story about that in the comments section. You know, if you're into this sort of content, then subscribe. You know, let me know what it is that you want to see. You know, I'm thinking about getting some live games up here soon. I might do some more deck breakdowns. And yeah, you know, just tell me what you're interested in, and I'll make that happen. But, you know, yeah, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think.